everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together, we're the Minimalists.
We're here with Malabama.
Hi, everybody.
TK Coleman.
What it is.
We've got the rest of our team in the studio as well. Coming up today on this free public minimal episode, we're talking to a listener about her boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. We also have an outstanding lightning round segment, a live stream question, and a listener tip for you. You can check out the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 374, where we answer 4 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists, or click the link in the description. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free because, say it with me, yo,
Advertisements suck.
Let's start with our callers. If you have a question or comment for our show, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Jenna.
My name is Jenna, and I'm a Patreon subscriber from Davenport, Iowa. My husband and I moved to the house we live in about 10 years ago, and multiple boxes and plastic storage bins have lived in a closet under our stairs untouched since we moved in. Last weekend, I eliminated about 5 large boxes worth of items. Unfortunately, there are 2 large plastic bins that remain of my own personal sentimental items. These items are from my childhood. Many pictures, personalized graffitied yearbooks, even my personalized sweatshirt and coat from 5th grade. And yes, it still fits. Many of the pictures and memories from school during these younger years involve people who meant the world to me then, but we've since grown distant or have maybe had a falling out, so they mean nothing to me now. I would say I love most of the memories these items trigger, but have no connection to these things. I consider some items to be untouchables. These are things having to do with my sister who died in 2008. I don't want to let go of these things because they bring me comfort when I see the things or think of the items. I don't foresee ever letting go of those things. And that brings me back to the fact that I still have many things living in boxes that aren't bringing value to my everyday life. The items I can't bring myself to release feel like a heavy weight, and I want to know how to either be okay letting go or to be okay to continue to store these bins in the closet.
Jenna, I definitely identify with your question here. When I first stumbled into minimalism, it was before I even stumbled into minimalism. Ryan can recall because he helped me through this. I was dealing with my mom's stuff and a lot of boxes of sentimental stuff. And of course, at some period of time, everything starts to become sentimental because we assign some sort of value or meaning to it, or especially what happens. She used this word that I used as well, untouchable. I won't even question as to whether or not I can let go of this, which is another way of saying I can't let go of this. I know I am unable to let go, and I've been paralyzed by that feeling as well. You look around and there are so many boxes of stuff, and you're so paralyzed you can't let go of any of it. You don't know where to start, right? And yet you've already started. You acknowledged something beautiful. There were 5 boxes that you let go of.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And now you've got 2 more boxes, 2 bins, where you're wondering, should I get rid of these? Or actually, what sounds like you're wondering is, I'm supposed to get rid of these in order to feel happiness. Well, as you know from last week's episode with Kapil Gupta, we're certainly not going to prescribe that you should get rid of these bins, because I don't know whether or not that will make you happier. I know that not being attached to them will make you freer, but you don't have to let go of the box in order to let go of the attachment. But I can tell you this, clinging prevents us from moving on. And you brought up that the memories that those things trigger, and I love that you said that. The things trigger the memories. The photos trigger the memories, but but you've already recognized, you've let go of the memories being in the things. That's a giant step in letting go, because it's not something you did, it's something you understood. You understood fundamentally that my memories, my sentiment, my relatives that have passed on are not in those things. And so, yes, practically, there are some things you can do. You may have already done. You can take pictures of the things that are bothering you, if they are indeed bothering you. If they're getting in the way, then they're clutter, right? We're not telling you to get rid of anything on this podcast, but understand that if something's getting in the way of living a meaningful life, if it's getting in the way of your joy, if it's causing some sort of discontent, and obvious it is, that's why you're calling in, then it is some sort of clutter, whether it's physical clutter or mental clutter, it's spiritual clutter, whatever it might be. It's some sort of clutter for you. Of course, you can also do a scanning party. We have that in our Minimalist Rulebook, which you can download for free at theminimalists.com. One of the things you can do is have a scanning party with any of the photos. So you don't have to get rid of the memory triggers. You can actually hold on to the things that trigger the memories. The irony of that, though, is I very rarely go back and visit the things. A couple of weeks ago, Ryan, we did a year-end wrap-up when Danny wasn't here. We have a photo tour every week. We go into someone's home. In fact, today we're going into Ryan's home on the private podcast, and we're going to take a look at his home. We left our homes and we went back in time to 2011, our very first tour, a year into the Minimalists, before we even knew TK, before we knew Malabama, before we knew Jordan, before we knew Danny or Emma or Social Jess, or we knew Podcast Sean, but he wasn't Podcast Sean then. And even when we met Professor Sean on that tour, and we had some photos from that tour, I went back. It's the first time we've gone and look at those things in 10 years, Ryan.
Yeah.
And it's okay to go back and have access to them, but I don't need to fill my house with those photos. They can be on a hard drive or in a cloud somewhere. And if I feel compelled to go back and look, great, I will. But I'm not going to burden myself by needing to always go back and look at them. I have access to them, which gives me the peace of mind. And that peace of mind, it helps me let go.
That's a pretty big deal too, especially because these are just things you want to look at and they're not things that you need to use. And one of the things I heard is they mean nothing to me. I also heard it feels heavy, and the value is that they trigger these memories. And if that's the primary value, you said they trigger these memories that are important to you when you see them or when you look at them, then maybe there's a possibility for you to capture them digitally so that you can see them and look at them whenever you want, but without having to carry around that heavy weight, because it seems that the value they provide is primarily what you've identified, the memories that they invoke. So if you can capture that capacity to invoke those memories, you're good to go.
Yeah. Oh, Jenna. Well, it's always hard to say goodbye to our things. I guess the more you let go, the kind of the easier it gets. But I mean, even now, like, you know, when Mariah and I do the minimalist game or whatever, like there's a little bit of resistance I have to get through. And it's even harder in Jenna's situation where, I mean, some of these things were her sister's, and letting go of her sister's things, I could see where she would feel almost like she is disrespecting her sister in a way. Like that's something that I know I would probably struggle with if I was Jenna. So I think it's just, you know, it's important to understand, like, what are these things truly doing for you? Because the act of holding on to your sister's things doesn't make you love your sister anymore or less, or miss her anymore or less. But it sounds like the story that you're kind of telling yourself is making it one way or the other. Man, she's looking for permission to let go or to hold on. Jen, I give you permission to do either, you know?
Yeah, or do both.
Yeah.
Because here's what I found when I started letting go of mom's stuff. I got more value from the few items that I held on to. Mm-hmm. Now, I held on to those things loosely, and nothing was untouchable. Even now, I have one remaining thing of my mom's stuff. It's this hat box, which doesn't even really match my aesthetic and my home, and it takes up one shelf. And for me, that is my untouchable thing, but I'm willing to touch it. I'm willing to let it go, because if I'm not willing to do that, then I'm clinging and I'm not able to move on if I am indeed clinging. You mentioned resistance, Ryan, and I wanted to touch on that because I think that's such an important point. Whenever I feel resistance, it's generally the path that I want to take. I got into the ice bath this morning around 4:30, 5 a.m. It was early and the stars were out. It was cold. And I do this every morning. In fact, I often get in the ice bath 2 times or 3 times yesterday. And every time there is some bit of resistance. Sometimes it's a twinge, like I barely feel the resistance. Other times it's like, oh, how am I possibly going to get into a tub full of ice water? And yet, as soon as I feel the resistance, I know that is the direction in which I want to travel, because that's where the freedom is. It's letting go of the resistance. Someone might call it pushing through the resistance, like Stephen Pressfield. But ultimately, it's seeing that resistance for what it is. It's seeing a weakness in myself that I'm able to overcome. And as soon as I witness that resistance, I'm able to go right through it. And I'm always glad that I moved through that resistance.
Man, you brought up the photos we pulled up, kind of going back 10 years, 12 years, whatever it was. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, that was really cool. Like, to go back and have all of those pictures kind of trigger these memories of, when things were way more simple. I think I said this on the podcast. It wasn't easy, but it was definitely more simple back then. And I love taking down a trip down memory lane. There's nothing wrong with wanting to trigger those memories. I feel like we just often put these rules in place that say, well, I can't go down memory lane unless I blank. And Jenna, you might be able to rework whatever that boundary is that you're setting up for yourself. But I think Josh said it earlier. Like, these things are weighing you down. I mean, if they're weighing you down, then there is probably something that you might benefit from letting go of some of these things that are weighing you down. But I just want to reiterate, you have our permission to do whatever you want to do. Like, we're not here to tell you what to do.
Also, letting go for you doesn't have to mean letting go for someone else. And so there might be ways of letting go that don't require you throwing them out. And it's sometimes easier to let go when we know that there's someone else that can find value out of it. And so maybe consider that as a possibility. I don't know all the details of your situation, but if there's someone else in the family for whom those things would not be clutter, who might find value in them, then that could be a viable alternative path.
Jenna, I'm going to send you a copy of our book, Everything That Remains. Ryan and I wrote this toward the beginning of our journey. Back in 2012 was when we wrote the first draft. So right around the time of that first tour, at the end of that first tour is when we started it. And I think you'll find immense value in this because it was a process of, it was really a book about how we ceased the clinging, not how we let go, but all the things we stopped clinging to in order to move forward. You got this, Jenna. We'll send you a copy of the audiobook version. If you like our podcast, I think you'll like that. Or if you want the ebook or the book version, we'd be happy to send those to you as well. Ryan, what time is it?
Oh, you know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round where we answer your questions from TikTok because we're cool. I got a TikTok account.
Yes, indeed. You can follow The Minimalists on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Minimalists. Now, during the lightning round, this is where we each have 60 seconds to answer your questions with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes over at theminimalists.com/podcast. So you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like. Looks like Cash on Desk has a question for us, Alabama.
Your 30-30 rule sounds dumb, to be honest. I know it's a mental trick, but can't we just learn to be disciplined?
Give me 60 seconds.
We say a lot of dumb stuff, Josh.
Here's what I'll say. Yes, the 30-30 rule is dumb. Every rule is dumb. The reason that we set up these boundaries is because of our own dumbness, our own oversights, our own inability to understand how to maneuver without boundaries. And so, yeah, if you think it's dumb and you already have the discipline to not spend, then you don't need a boundary like this. You're already living within your boundaries, right? Here's something pithy for you, though. The solution is the problem. The problem is the solution. And so this is not a solution for you. This is merely a boundary. It's not going to make you be a better person. It's not going to make you consume less. What it does is it staves off impulse. And if you're burdened by impulse, then this boundary is for you.
All right, give me 60 seconds. Professor Sean, my pithy answer is this. Discipline is found within the boundaries. So another way to look at this is discipline doesn't exist without boundaries. And yeah, a lot of the rules that we make up are kind of silly or maybe it's, I don't know, petty or however you want to look at it. But the rules that you make up is what's going to create that discipline. You cannot have the discipline unless you set up some boundaries for yourself.
All right, let me get that 60-second shot clock. Here we go. What's useful for me might be terrible for we. When analyzing, assessing, applying advice, there are two common extremes. The first extreme is to say, hey, here's something that was really helpful in my life. Therefore, it is a universal prescription that applies to everyone else's life. Ever since I started getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, my health has improved. My finances have improved. I've made 5 times as many friends in the past 5 months as I did in the past 5 years. And you ought to do it too. I don't know anything about you, but nuance be damned. You ought to do what I do because it worked for me. The other extreme is to say, look, I don't need any accountability partner to motivate myself. Well, that's a silly idea. Why would you suggest that to anyone? I don't need a coach or a book to help me. I just motivate myself to do it. Why would you suggest it to anyone else? Hey, look, some people find things useful even when they are useless to you. So the middle way is to say, what's useful to me might not be useful to we. What's useful to we might not be useful for me. And there's no need to label it dumb or anything else in between.
He shot it right through the buzzer.
That's
I
right.
think it counted.
We're going to have to look at the replay. Well, I had 30 seconds left over, so.
Oh, you lent it to him.
That's right.
I will say one thing about discipline. I haven't needed discipline to do the most profound and most compelling things in my life. Yes, there is resistance there, but discipline wasn't required. There was an understanding that if I push through the resistance, then whatever is waiting for me on the other side is much more rewarding to me than avoiding the resistance will be. Let's check in with our Patreon live stream in a moment. But first, real quick for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalists because the world needs another podcast. Ryan and I, we started this side project with our friends Carl and Alberto back in 2016. It's called Minimalism Life. And you can find it at minimalism.com. That's right, minimalism.com. You can also follow it on Twitter at minimalism, on TikTok at minimalism. We're still trying to get at minimalism for Instagram. We're working on that. But we have at Minimalism Life over there as well. But we just started a podcast called Minimalism Life. And it's just once a month and it's about 3 minutes. Speaking of minimalism, so if you want to subscribe to it, you can find it wherever podcasts are casted, wherever pods are casted. Spotify, Apple, etc. We just released the first few episodes on Christmas Day as a nice little bonus. So you can find the first, 4 or 5 episodes out there at this point. They're like 3 minutes long, a little essay and some commentary on the essay. And not too long, I'll ask TK and Ryan and maybe Carl and Professor Sean and a few others to join on this journey. Short little bite-sized insights about minimalist well-being, minimalist travel, minimalist design. You can find that. We'll put a link to the Minimalism Life podcast, which comes out once a month toward the beginning of the month. We think you'll enjoy it. Let's check in with our Patreon live stream. Alabama, I know we're not actually live streaming this episode, but you collected a question from a previous live stream. What do you got for us?
I did. This is a question from Nina. She asks, how do you guys find time to film your podcasts while in the same location? Don't you all live in different cities?
Sort of. So we actually come in here on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. to do the live stream and record a podcast. And often spend an entire day. Yes, all three of us live in different counties, and so technically different cities. I'm up in Ventura County. Ryan's here in Los Angeles County. TK is down in Orange County.
The OG from the OC.
Yeah, you know me. And yet we come together once or twice a week, and then we do what the whole world has been doing for a few years now. We work remotely the other times. And we do the same thing with our team. We don't force someone to work a 9 to 5. And even if you've completed your task, you must stay here until the bell rings. No, you do what you need to do in order to get the job done. And that's what we do. We come in here once or twice a week, relatively regularly, make a long drive, get up early. But it's totally worth it. I don't feel like I have to do this. I feel like I get to do it.
Yeah, me neither. I don't feel like I have to do it.
I got a gun underneath the
desk. Ryan's like, you got 45 seconds.
Minimalism
is really about doing what's best for you.
Tell them how much you like it or else, TK.
So what's your drive down here? Like hour, 30 minutes, something like that?
It depends. So I left this morning around 5:30 and I got here in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And sometimes though, if I'll leave at the wrong time, like we were here in the studio on Sunday of all times last week. And the drive home was over 3 hours because there was a huge thing that was tipped over on the 101. And so I just make room for that. And I will use that time still. I would prefer not to have the long drive. However, because I do have it, I just use it. I make phone calls. Yeah. I listen to audiobooks or podcasts, or I listen to music. I decompress. I'll do Wim Hof breathing, but not too much of it because I don't want to pass out behind the wheel.
No.
But I use that time that's been given to me because it doesn't feel like a burden. We used to do it all the time. Remember, Ryan used to drive from Piqua, Ohio to Cincinnati.
Oh my goodness, man.
He lived in Piqua. That's like driving, I don't know, from New York City to LA, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I would even go down to like Florence, Kentucky. So, I mean, it was even further. No, I mean, yeah, with the long commutes, there's always like something you can kind of do with podcasts or audiobooks. So how long does it take you to get here from
on average, an hour and a half.
Is it okay?
If I leave early enough, it can be like a solid hour. If I leave late enough, it can be 2 hours.
Yeah, all depends on traffic. And LA is so funny that way. It's like you might leave and it says, "Oh, you'll be there in 25 minutes," and then an accident happens, and then all of a sudden it's 3 hours.
When I was a dog sitter, I walked an hour and a half there, and then an hour and a half back every day for work.
Uphill, both ways, in the snow, naked.
2 feet of snow, naked, yeah.
In Alabama, I know we had one other Patreon question. We typically do a live stream every Tuesday at 10 a.m. So we gathered this. We're late on this because it was, I believe, a Christmas gift question, but let's apply it more broadly to gifts in general because we're faced with this all year, right? What's right around the corner now? Valentine's Day. And after that, Ryan always gets me something for Flag Day.
That's right. This was a question from Meredith, and she said, every year I beg my family not to give me any gifts, and every year they refuse to respect my wishes. This year, my husband and I moved to a new house, and I've tried to explain to them that we're trying to downsize. It hurts my feelings that they refuse to listen to me and respect my wishes. This sounds like such a first world problem, I know, but I don't want to dread celebrations because of things like this. Any suggestions?
What if I went to your living room and just dumped a big pile of trash in there? And I was like, here you go. Merry Christmas.
Oh.
Like, it's easy to look at that and say, well, if it was trash, I would, I'd get it out of my house as soon as possible.
But we're talking about trash.
But we are talking about trash. It looks a little bit different. Or if I, took some end tables and threw them in your front lawn, here you go. Here's some end tables for you. I mean, are you just going to leave them there because I gave them to you? Like, no, it's something that doesn't serve a purpose. It doesn't bring you joy. You didn't ask for it. You're going to get rid of it. It is a little bit more difficult when someone gives you something, but if someone is disrespecting your boundaries, if they are going out of their way to not support you, I guess you don't have to go out of your way to support the decisions that they're making for you.
You are allowed to say no.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowed to say no. No is a complete sentence on its own. If someone wants to give you a gift and you don't want that gift, you don't have to be mean about it. You can show compassion and still say, no, thank you. No, I'm not going to accept that. No, I'm not going to bring it into my life, especially if you've already communicated the fact that I don't want any excess stuff. This isn't a judgment onto you. I don't have to explain myself. I'm simply going to say, no, I don't want that gift. No, I don't want that necktie. No, I don't want those cufflinks. No, I don't want that purse. No, I don't want that gift card. No, I don't want the things you want to heap onto me. And it's not a judgment of you.
Mm-mm.
It is simply understanding what adds value to my life. You're understanding that you have enough. Now, I'll say one other thing. You might be telling them you don't want it, but they may not be hearing you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, is there some other way that you can get them to hear you without being rude, without being mean, without being unkind? Is there a way to help them understand that what they're doing is not adding value to your life at all?
Yeah. People don't respond to the boundaries you promise, but to the boundaries that you deliver. And the way you deliver on a boundary isn't by talking about it so that people can hear it, but by making your boundary felt. And as unfair and harsh as it seems, when we express dissatisfaction, that's just not as moving as when we flat out refuse to accept something. And you could do that in a couple of ways. You can say no and refuse to accept it, or you can say, hey, look, if you give that to me, I've already told you how I feel. I'm going to sell it or I'm going to give it away. If you think you're going to be angry about that, you should factor that into your decision now. And then you've got to make good on it. You've either got to deliver a hard no, or you've got to let them know what you're going to do with it and then do that thing with it. Because as Ryan said, once they give it to you, it's yours and you get to do with it whatever you please. And that means give it away, sell it, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah. My grandma, my Oma, gave me that paperweight. She's like, here you go. You're an author. Here's a paperweight because I must just have papers everywhere.
Ryan, I got you a metaphor.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but I very kindly said, wow, thanks for thinking of me. That really means a lot. This is a beautiful paperweight. You know what? I don't really have a spot for this, but if you would like, I can find it a really good home if you want. And she was like, oh, could you do that? I'm like, yeah, I'd be happy to find it a good home.
Oh.
So I found it a good home. Now, things that you have in your house right now that people gave you that you don't want, the one thing that I would recommend, or let me just say what I would do if I was in your situation. I would call up the person who gave me that thing. And I'd say, hey, you know what? You gave me this thing however many years, weeks, whatever, months ago. It's a really beautiful thing. I don't have room for it anymore. So I was thinking about donating it or I was thinking about selling it, but I wanted to call you first to see if you wanted to do something else with it. And if not, then I will find it a better home. But I wanted to give the courtesy of calling you to see what you would think would be the most appropriate way for me to get rid of this.
I love that. I'm not saying no to you. I'm saying no to this thing because I simply don't have the space for it. And that's it. How can you argue with that?
Yeah.
Yes, you do have the space.
Yeah.
No, I simply don't have the space for it. Would you be willing to withhold the gift giving this birthday, this Valentine's Day, this sweetest day, this flag day?
We should start a shop called unwantedgifts.com. All the people that are receiving these unwanted gifts, they send them to us. And we just sell them online for them and we can just donate the money to charity. Unwantedgifts.com. Yeah. I don't own the domain.
Patent.
Well, someone's going to go buy it now.
Yeah. Hopefully we can send them the gifts.
Yeah.
All right, before we get to our listener tips today, coming up on the Maximal episode, if you're listening to the public episode here, the minimal episode, we have a million more questions from callers, social media, and the live stream, a private minimalist home tour. We're going to walk into Ryan's house and man, do I have to talk to you about this house, Ryan? I like it.
Hey, they don't call me the messy minimalist for nothing.
We do a weekly home tour every week where we invite you into our homes and you can scrutinize it with us. We also have our impulse purchases segment. This might be my favorite impulse purchase segment. Yeah. You were watching the video with me beforehand, Ryan. This described me, I think, as a teenager, and I think a lot of you will find value in this one. Plus, of course, TK's tweet of the week. We've got an outstanding added value segment for you as well, and much, much more of less. And if you want to hear all that, check out the Minimalists private podcast, patreon.com/The Minimalist, or click the link in the description. Alabama, what else you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and I'm from LA, and I wanted to leave a comment for listeners based on your addiction episode. My husband and I have been dealing with addiction issues in our families and relationships for many years, and we've finally found an approach that has aligned well with minimalism and all the things we've learned from Josh and Ryan. So there's a recovery program called Smart Recovery for addicts and loved ones, as well as a book for loved ones called Beyond Addiction, How Science and Kindness Can Help People Change. Both encourage a real methodology steeped in science that allowed us to simplify these really intimidating issues. We wanted to share what we found in hopes that it will help other minimalists simplify the complexity of addiction issues in their lives.
All right, y'all, that is our minimal episode for today. We'll see you on Patreon for the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 374. If you leave here today with just one message, let it be this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.